Julia Hartley-Brewer at breakfast on talkRADIO.
Good morning to you. This is Talk Radio Breakfast with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Appreciate you joining me. Just some breaking news in the last 5 minutes or so. Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, obviously on the day, of course, we've seen the latest GDP figures growing by 1.3 in the last quarter. But again, 1.3% still nothing like where we were pre-pandemic. But the Chancellor's also been asked, of course, about the latest Tory sleaze allegations and all of those issues. And he has said that on the broader point, he said, and reflecting over recent events, I think for us as a government, it's fair to say that we need to do better than we did last week, and we know that. So he has a structure on that, of course, after the Prime Minister said that Britain was not remotely a corrupt country. But that's what the Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, has had to say. Also, latest figures on the NHS waiting list. 5.83 million people currently waiting for NHS treatment in England. That's just actually in September, the most recent figures that were already gone up by that. Of course, we know from the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, when we took over that job, that actually the figure is probably closer to 12 million in terms of people who've actually not been referred even for that those first appointments to get on those waiting lists. 9:51 is the time now. Let's talk about snowflake students and cancel culture, because once again it has struck. This after the Cambridge Union decided to ban art historian Andrew Graham Dixon for an impression he did parodying Adolf Hitler during a debate after some students complained. After that, they said they were going to issue a whole list of people on their blacklist who were not going to be invited to the Cambridge Union. Well, Monty Python star John Cleese, who was supposed to be going to an event very soon, decided to tell the Cambridge Union that actually, don't bother blacklisting me, he said, I'll blacklist myself, and said he would no longer appear at Cambridge Union because of this. Others have followed suit, and what a surprise, there's been backtracking this morning. Let's talk to Connor Tomlinson. He's a political commentator at Young Voices UK. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Once again, we have cancel culture doing its ugly work. Let's just go back just briefly to what actually happened. What was it that Andrew Graham Dixon actually did that prompted the blacklisting?
So he appeared at a debate at the University of Cambridge. The moderator and himself had a few glasses of wine beforehand. So the moderator, the head of the union, I believe his name is Keir Bradwell. There we go, nice and checked. He said, I wasn't able to stop the very long Hitler-based impersonation because we were all a bit too drunk. And Andrew Graham had decided to do the impression because he was emphasising exactly how abhorrent the Nazis were, saying that their ideology had allowed them to exclude great artists who weren't part of the Aryan race, as they conceived it, which would have included Hitler himself, funnily enough, from showcasing their artwork and how ridiculous that was. And following that, the heads of diversity inclusion did their usual thing and cried very profitably, might I add, that we are so oppressed by this man's words that he must be expunged from all society. And Mr. Bradwell decided to create a blacklist for Cambridge's speakers.
And said, yes, he was going to add more people. But this is the thing, Andrew Graham Dixon, he wasn't doing it sort of as a joke itself. He was basically doing an impression of Hitler and his views on what Hitler would have regarded as degenerate modern art. And being he was basically saying these are the abhorrent, objectionable views of Hitler as expressed by Hitler. So everyone saw the point at the time, but of course everything's offensive to people who choose to take offence. The offender-trons, it's all they do these days. But what I love John Cleese hitting back at this. He pointed out in his tweet that he was blacklisting himself before someone else did, because he said this is because he hears someone there has been blacklisted for doing an impersonation of Hitler. I regret that I did the same on a Monty Python show, so I'm blacklisting myself. Others have come out and said they would happily go on that blacklist too. And actually there were some demands for many people who get invited to the Cambridge Union, Oxford Union, many other student unions to basically say, look, we're going to blacklist the Cambridge Union ourselves. We will not appear if you're going to blacklist other people. It's the first sign of a proper concerted fight back on this. And guess what? It worked almost immediately. We had a backtracking from the Cambridge Union president.
It's good that they're all showing a form of solidarity and standing on principle, because as lots of comedians, as you speak to regular guests on your show, will tell you, comedians are the canaries in the coal mine for authoritarianism. We teach kids this with the Emperor's New Clothes fable as young as primary school, but we seem to have forgotten the wisdom of our ancestors in that regard. The role of the court jester, for example, he's the only person that can mock the king, but as soon as the king decapitates the jester, he might lose some really valuable stuff that would save the kingdom when many a truth is said in jest. So when we start decapitating either digitally or physically in authoritarian regimes around the world, our comedians, we lose some great insight on the social issues which plague our society today.
But this is the thing. I mean, the argument is people not understanding context is what I don't understand. Because you even have with not just with Monty Python, but John Cleese, of course, with one of the racist characters, the old major or whatever it was that in Fawlty Towers, and these bits had to be cut out because people not understanding that no one was endorsing this man's views. The whole point we were mocking and deriding this man's views. That's why it was funny. It does seem to me that an awful lot of people who supposedly are clever enough to get the sort of straight A marks to get into Cambridge Union are really quite thick. Because if you're at the Cambridge Union, you don't understand this. I mean, I have to say, I've been invited numerous times to speak at the Oxford Union and the Cambridge Union, and I have to say, I always turn it down because, frankly, I don't want to be stuck and hours and hours away from home at 1 o'clock in the morning when these things end, when I've got to get up at 4:30, and it doesn't really, it's just on a weekday, it doesn't work for me. But I would definitely happily join a boycott of these unions. If they boycott anyone else for free speech, then, by all means argue with people if you disagree with them, but you can't boycott people because you disagree with them.
Ideology is anathema to common sense. We had this a lot on my university campus, Kent, which was the hotbed of the strikes that started in 2017 and now continuing through. And a lot of this was supported by the student unions and particularly the students because they sort of stood in solidarity with their very socialist lecturers. My only objection to actually boycotting all these sorts of things, it could negate the ability to enter these universities, go into the belly of the beast, as it were, and confront the snowflake students firsthand. We saw this with Jordan Peterson at Oxford Union. He went there and changed quite a few people's mind, but then he was disinvited from Cambridge Union. So if I were John Cleese, I would have taken up the opportunity, but I would have tested the waters and crossed as many boundaries.
Very interesting. Connor Tomlinson, lovely to talk to you. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed.